What is going on, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Here it is, finally, at last. 5 facts that you didn't know about SMITE. Let's just jump straight into it. First on the list is to do with Mercury. Mercury is very quick.
Do you have any idea how fast I am?
Probably the quickest in SMITE, you'd say, right? Well, maybe not. What if I told you that this guy was the fastest guard in SMITE? You'd probably think I was crazy, right? Well, yeah, I am crazy. Vamana isn't the fastest guard in SMITE. Not now, anyway. He used to be. It wasn't until the patch on the 21st of November 2016 that Mercury actually became the quickest god in SMITE. Vamana was the quickest god in SMITE. His base movement speed without any movement speed items was 380. Mercury's was 375. This just confused the SMITE community and they demanded change, and Hi-Rez obliged. It wasn't until that day that Mercury had his movement speed changed to 381. Yep, he has beaten Vamana by just 1. I'm sorry, Vamana, but you're not the quickest in SMITE anymore. You're just a big baby. Some of you might have noticed that there is a new statue located on the solo lane side of the map, usually where the portal demon spawns. It's a statue of professional SMITE player David Hans, better known as Allied, who's best known for playing ADC and AFK, although he has played for many different teams. He actually also played as a mid laner for Team Envious on Xbox. Allied got a pentakill in competitive gameplay 26th of April 2015 versus TSM, Team Solo Mid, with Ram. He really, truly was a great player. He was loved immensely by the SMITE community, and obviously by his family and friends. Allied had been struggling with cancer for a long time, and he did actually beat his battle, but unfortunately, the cancer relapsed. It came back, and Allied died on the 3rd of May 2017. This statue is made to commemorate Allied. Rest in peace, Allied.
Life and being able to fight through all of that, to be the best person I can be, in game and out of game, really, like that's what I want to be remembered as. I want people to be like, damn, he's cool. Like that's what I want to be. That's
On a much lighter note now, I am joined by a fellow SMITE YouTuber who does videos based on lore and things like that. He also does gameplay. He's got a very cool channel. Obviously, all of his links will be in the description below, but take it away, Prime.
Hi everyone, Prime here, and first thing we're going to be talking about here is the Old Vulcan's kit. There were plenty of problems with Old Vulcan, which is why he was turned into New Vulcan, but before I talk about that, his old passive, Forge, used to take some of Vulcan's personal protections and give them to whichever turrets may have been on the battlefield at any given time. Also allowed his turrets to regen their HP when he was within their radius. His heavy shot allowed his next basic attack to slow whatever opponent was hit after the use of heavy shot. His first turret is very similar to what it is now. Not much changed. It's still called Inferno turret, still pretty much did exactly what it does now. The third ability, or the second turret, the Thumper turret, a stationary turret that damaged everything within a certain radius of itself, and it was a fairly wide radius, and also slowed any gods caught within it for 2 seconds. It took Vulcan's penetrations and added that to its damage, not even a portion, just his base, whatever his penetrations were, just add that onto the turret. And his last skill, being his ultimate, pretty similar to Torbjorn's ult, in that it was essentially a big buff. It increased his movement speed and his protections and allowed his turrets to fire a lot more rapidly. And specifically for his Inferno turret, it increased the radius that thing could fire to 360 degrees, rather than the cone that it currently and at the time did fire in. So, the problem with Vulcan was purely that he wasn't really good at very much, if anything, and he wasn't very useful. I wasn't playing the game at that time, but I can assume that it wasn't too difficult to get out of his Thumper turret radius, and his regular turrets now aren't exactly the hardest things to avoid in the world. He was a Guardian, and he could be fairly tanky, but Vulcan's CC was not only just mostly slow, as being very difficult to use for peeling or initiation, setup, things of that nature, what you'd expect a Guardian to use their CC for. But because it was also like his biggest CC tool was in fact his Thumper turret, being a stationary turret that's very easily avoided, you can guess the problems. Vulcan had pretty poor setup. He used a bunch of slows. Most of his kit, or everything in his kit, pretty much slowed, but that's not very useful when you can just beads the slow and it's as if nothing happened. And granted, beads isn't what it is now, where it has a 160 second or so cooldown. You could have the 90 seconds on the beads. So essentially every fight, Vulcan's not very useful. Especially if he's not doing that much damage, because he's not supposed to be doing that much damage because he's a Guardian. So the change was pretty validated. Mind the change? I don't really. So yeah, that's old Vulcan. Did you know that the characters in SMITE, some of them have further basic attack ranges than others? And we're not just talking melee attackers and ranged attackers. Aphrodite has the longest basic attack range in the game, but did you know that Kepri in fact had the shortest? Had being an important word there, because with all the melee basic attackers, they pretty much made all of their basic attack ranges about the same at some point, so all of them seem to have a range of 12, whereas there are two exceptions. Awilix and Cuchulainn both have basic attack ranges of 16. Now why someone like, say, Erlong Shen, who uses a thrusting attack like both of them do, also doesn't have a further basic attack range, and maybe Athena as well? Not too sure, but those two it makes sense because of their basic attack animation. Though why others don't, I don't know. Then we've got ranged characters, and the two characters who have the shortest basic attack range among ranged characters are Sylvanas, which makes sense because he's the only AoE basic attacker. Except that's not true because Fafnir is also an AoE basic attacker. And Fafnir has the shortest range in the entire game, being 35. With most ranged basic attackers having a basic attack distance traveled of about 55 feet. Why ranged attackers would have different distances that their basics can travel? Not too sure. I suppose it would make sense if you had and of course, having a bunch of different ones calls into question game balance, because of course if you have a character like Erlong Shen having that extra range on his basic attack, it would make boxing against him with a character like, say, Bakazora, who has a short basic attack range. A little unfair, but yeah. That's all I have for you on basic attack ranges.
So back in the olden days when SMITE was new and dabbing didn't exist, there used to be a few changes with the jungle camp buffs. And we all know what buffs we have today. We have the damage buff, the mana and cooldown buff, the attack speed buff, the void buff, there's the fire giant's might, there's the bull demon king's might, and there's the apophis something something. Oh, and of course the actual normal movement speed buff. And we all know that you can only carry one of these buffs and one of these buffs. You can carry one of these buffs and one of these buffs, but that's it. And what if I told you that there was a time back in SMITE when you could carry more buffs? And I'm not talking fire giant and damage buff, oh no. I'm talking speed buff, damage buff, fire giant buff. And there were a few other buffs back in the day. One of them was the protection buff. And if you killed this buff, it gave you 50 protections. 50 magical protections and 50 physical protections. That was the yellow one, and there was also a green one that gave you health every few seconds as well. And remember, you could have pretty much all of the buffs together at the same time, and this was called the Rainbow Belt. So that's it, we're done. Those are the 5 facts for this episode. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this series. Should I make it a thing? I wasn't too sure, that's why it took me so long to make this episode. But if you do like this, please let me know by leaving a like on the video, subscribing if you are new. Go check out NTG, the guy that gave us some input with that Vulcan and the basic attack ranges. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.